They speak a language originating from China, live in one of two distinct countries, and carry Austroasiatic DNA deep within their cells. I am talking about the indigenous Bengali. Hi, I'm Krutik, I have a PhD in genetics, and a viewer has asked me over and over to investigate the deep ancestry of the Bengali people. The Bengali people reside in one of the most interesting sectors of the human genomic map. When I say Bengali, I first need to emphasize a pause and a clarification that we are talking about two distinct geographic groups. So the Bengali are two distinct groups that share a unique genetic origin, even though the modern politics of the region has drawn borders up to confuse the matter. First, we have Bangladesh. This is a Muslim majority country which broke away from Greater India, leaving a beautifully shaped nation nestled between west, north, east India and Myanmar to the southeast. Whoever drew these maps was incredibly high, because this makes absolutely no sense. But anyways, right next door we have West Bengal. This is a province inside of India, encompassing a vibrant mix of tribal, Hindu and Muslim communities. This area stretches all the way up to border with Nepal and Bhutan in the north. While religious divisions are interesting, a more telling sign of diversity is the languages spoken, because these trace back to thousands of years of movement, heritage and community, whereas religions are much more easy to chop and change.
No, it's nothing bad. I'm just concerned because my husband hasn't been attending your services lately.
Well, I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing, but then God himself told me I should seek a new path.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he appeared before me in a dream, and I knew that was special because I usually dream about naked...
There are 18 unique languages documented within Western Bengal. 13 stem from the Indo-European language family, 4 are Dravidian, and 1 comes from the Tibeto-Burman language family. Now, some time ago, some people drew a political map on this line declaring that the people on either side of this boundary are different. But genetics doesn't really care about borders. It doesn't work that way. So, to fully explore the true heritage of the Bengali people, we are diving into 2 sources: a more recent paper exploring the tribes of Western Bengal, and a 2013 study that investigated the DNA of the indigenous tribes of Bangladesh. And the reason why the story is so interesting is because it tells of a incredible crossroads that started all the way back in the Pleistocene, tens of thousands of years ago. We've had massive influxes of DNA from almost every direction. We're talking about native Andamanese gene flow of South Asia, then Austroasiatic influence flowing in from the Bay of Bengal. Interestingly, deep Chinese influence pushing in from the north, specifically from a Tibeto-Burman group that has traces all the way back into the Pleistocene. Ancient Iranian ancestry from farmers and pastoralists. More recently, gene flow from Muslim traders traversing the Silk Road and other Muslim groups who enter the South Asia for conquest are all wrapped up in this area. So when we ask who are the Bangladeshi, it's actually quite an involved question. Let's first zoom into the indigenous people of the modern-day Bangladesh. We're pulling out a fantastic study from Ghazi and colleagues from 2013. We are asking 2 questions here. How similar are the indigenous people of Bangladesh to other populations in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia? And more importantly, where on earth did these native inhabitants actually come from? To answer this, the research team used uniparental markers, the mitochondrial DNA, passed down only from mother to child, and the Y chromosome, which is passed only between fathers, as well as some biparental autosomal markers, but the real gold of this research was in the uniparental markers, and we'll talk about that. They sampled 3 specific Tibeto-Burmese speaking tribes, indigenous to the Chittagong Hill Tract of Bangladesh, the Chakma, Marma, and Tripura. I probably butchered those names, you can tell me in the comments. But really interestingly, the Tibeto-Burman language family is absolutely widespread, with native-speaking tribes in Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, northeast India, some parts of Pakistan. But where did this language come from? Well, the Tibeto-Burman language comes from China, right around the Yellow River. From there it spread into the Himalayas, which makes complete sense, as most languages spoken in the Himalayas today belong to the Tibeto-Burman family. So, looking at their DNA, how do these Bangladeshi tribes compare to their neighbors? When we look into the principal component analysis for the maternal mitochondrial DNA, the Tibeto-Burman speaking Bangladeshi tribes group extremely closely with Indian Tibeto-Burman speaking groups. This is not surprising. They clearly share a deep ancestral history prior to the modern partition of Greater India and Bangladesh, and prior to other groups such as the Iranian farmers, the ancient North Indians, the ancient South Indians, all these other groups which I've talked about in these other videos, way before these came into the picture. But this is actually where the story gets really wild. When the researchers looked at the paternal Y chromosome signal, the Tibeto-Burman tribes from Bangladesh and India were genetically incredibly distant from Indo-European and Austroasiatic speaking Indian tribes. The researchers unfortunately did not have access to Dravidian speaking tribes for this study, which is a total bummer. My geneticist gut is telling me that the Dravidian speakers would be even further afield, way apart from the Tibeto-Burman speaking people. But without data, this is just me speculating. Okay, let's pivot back to the mothers. Where do the female Tibeto-Burman Bangladeshi fit into all of this? Their mitochondrial DNA is actually much closer to the Southeast Asian and Austroasiatic genetic signal than it is to the Indo-European or Austroasiatic speaking Indian tribes. Think of mitochondrial DNA as a family recipe passed down exclusively from mother to child. And this recipe is telling us a big story. It tells us when the initial Tibeto-Burman people descended from the Himalayas into South Asia, they were likely descendants of ancient South Chinese populations. Over time, these ancient South Chinese populations had bidirectional gene flow with Southeast Asia. But here is the kicker. The Tibeto-Burman female mitochondrial DNA has diverged far less than the male Y chromosome, and it shows much less heterogeneity. This proves two vital things. First, women were a foundational part of the early migrations into Bangladesh out of the Himalayas, physically carrying their ancient East Asian ancestry with them, and it persists to this very day. Secondly, the women of these ancient tribes were much less likely to engage with foreign gene flow events with males. In contrast, the male Tibeto-Burman speaking people were more likely to engage with outside gene flow events. To figure out exactly where they came from, the researchers looked into specific haplogroups. In the mitochondrial DNA, we see a sporadic, highly diverse set of M haplogroups. We also see F1 present in incredibly high frequencies, between 12 to 24% within these tribes. Now, F1 is most predominant in modern China, Vietnam, Thailand, and Japan. They share an incredibly ancient ancestry with these Southeast Asian groups. But the paternal Y haplogroups are even more telling. The most common marker from the male lineage was O3A3C, representing between 35 and 50% of the paternal lineages within these tribes. O3A3C is a major branch of the O3 family, which is most common to whom? The Han Chinese. I made a whole video on them. Please check it out. It was quite a good one. We also see prominent levels of O2A, has direct links with Southeast Asia, and we have haplogroup P, a mysterious genetic marker that is quite common with the Negrito populations of the Philippines. They're the native Filipinos that moved into the Philippines between 50 and 30,000 years ago, so well into the Pleistocene. So we are painting a unique map here. Sometime during the Pleistocene, ancient humans moved from North China, the ancestral homeland of the Han, into the Himalayas, carrying the Tibeto-Burmese language. Now remember, that's different from the Sinitic language, which is spoken by most of China today. It's of a similar lineage, it's a different group of languages. These pioneers, carrying the maternal F in high concentrations and paternal O3, O2, and P, cousins of these people would later branch off and move into the Southeast Asia. But our Himalayan group kept expanding, spreading their genetics and the Tibeto-Burman language. They eventually entered into South Asia, settling into modern-day Bangladesh and India and some parts of Pakistan. Once there, they maintained a strict level of tribal and linguistic endogamy. As such, their language has survived all the way to the modern day. They mostly married within their own group, within their tribes, and locked down those specific haplogroups in incredibly high frequencies. But they didn't stay completely isolated. We know that the males reproduced outside of their language family because of the steppe-related patterns we see in R1A1 and maternal macro haplogroups M floating in this modern population. That's quite an incredible story, isn't it? Using pure genetic data, we've managed to reconstruct a Paleolithic migration of the indigenous Bangladeshi. But here's the catch. The Tibeto-Burman population of Bangladesh makes up just 1% of the country. It would be a scientific injustice to ignore the rest of the people of this region. To understand them, we're going to look into a brand new 2025 study by Saha and Roy. They investigated the genetic diversity of tribal populations in northwestern Bengal, southwestern Bengal, and a Muslim population in West Bengal. They looked at 15 autosomal short tandem repeats, or STRs. Imagine STRs as a genetic stutter, chains of repetitive DNA nucleotides that have a naturally higher mutation rate. Because they mutate so quickly, they are an absolutely perfect tool for forensic scientists to assess population-level heterozygosity. In plain English, they tell us how genetically diverse a group of people is. And the results were quite interesting. The northwestern tribal people of West Bengal had a heterozygosity level of between 0.67 and 0.68. The southwestern tribal people showed levels between 0.69 and 0.83. But the Muslim population of West Bengal, their heterogeneity level spiked up between 0.74 and 0.85. Now, what does that mean? It strongly indicates that this Muslim population has experienced significantly more outside gene flow. This is likely due to a genetic artifact of Central Asian or Arab merchants traveling along the Silk Road. Today, Bangladesh and India are two distinct countries on the modern map. But the genetic continuity of the people living there defies borders, religions, and national identities. The deepest indigenous roots of this region trace back to an ancient epic migration from the Yellow River of China, carrying genetic markers that link them to the ancient basal East Asians, perfectly blended into the ultimate crossroads of human history with newer migrations from the steppes, Zagros Mountains, and newer Muslim arrivals. I've been Krutik. Follow this channel on X, hit the bell for more notifications, check out the pinned comments for more videos such as this one, and subscribe to the Scientific Journal Club. See you next time for more science.